Here in section 3, we're going to look at writing the full equation of a line, not just finding the slope. One common form to write an equation of a line is y equals mx plus b, and that is called slope-intercept form. The reason it's called that is because it uses the slope and the y-intercept and relates x and y using those. So if we want to quickly define the parts of that formula, we can, above this, write ourselves a couple notes. The m is the slope. And if you remember from our slope formula, we use the letter m for that reason. The b is the y-intercept. It is the point on your graph where your line intersects or crosses the y-axis, which is the up and down line on the graph. So the y-intercept is that place where it crosses. The slope is how steep the line is, or how quickly the line changes in its y value compared to its x value. So let's go ahead and do the first example here. We have the slope of 1/4 and the y-intercept of -3. So I'm going to write this equation, and I'm going to use the letter y, just as I have it, equals the slope, 1/4, times x. You can write the times symbol in there if you want, or it's implied by writing it next to it. And then the y-intercept plus a -3, or simply -3. This right here would be the complete equation. When you write the equation of the line, you'll notice that you will always have a y and always have an x present in it when you're writing out the equation. You don't use the -3 as the value for y. That is b, the y-intercept. So be careful with those. Sometimes that can be confusing. Let's do another example. We have a slope of -3/2 and a y-intercept of 2. So I'm going to write out y equals, and then where I used to have a slope, that letter m, I'm going to replace that with -3/2. And then my y-intercept of 2, I'm just going to write plus 2. But make sure you don't forget your x. I almost forgot that myself. Times x plus 2. So this right here would be my full equation. This right here would be my equation here for slope-intercept form. If we scroll down a little bit, we can do this from a graph as well. On this graph, number 9, we can figure out our slope and our y-intercept by giving ourselves a couple points. So I see that it crosses the y-axis right here, 1 up. Another place that it neatly crosses a grid line here is 1 over and 3 up. So I give myself those points to make it a little bit easier to do this. My slope is going to be some positive number. As I go from left to right, I notice that I am going up. So my slope is going to be a positive number. And specifically, I am going a rise, or a change in y of 2, compared to a run, or a change in x of 1. So my slope is a positive 2 over 1. My y-intercept, I'll just abbreviate that. My y-intercept is where I cross the y-axis, which is this line right here. The place that I do that is up 1. So my y-intercept is going to be 1. Now if I'm going to write it in that form, y equals mx plus b, I would write y equals my slope, 2 over 1, x, plus my y-intercept, 1. And let's do one last example here. We have a y-axis here, so we'll identify our y-intercept as the place where it crosses there. And then we'll look for another place where it neatly crosses the axis, or the grid lines. And when we look for our slope, we see that we have a change in y of 3 over a change in x of 4. So my slope is 3, the change in y goes on top, over 4, the change in x. Since it is going down as I go from left to right, is down sloping, I'm going to make this slope negative. The y-intercept is where we cross the y-axis, and we identify that being at -1. Crosses that green line at -1. So my final equation for this line is going to be y equals my slope, -3 over 4, times x, and then my y-intercept is going to be plus a -1, or simply -1. So now I have an equation for each of these lines that allows me to completely graph that line. When we get to later sections, we'll practice directly graphing the line from this form. One thing to just be aware of, in some problems, it will cross the y-axis directly through 0. If that ever happens, you will have a y-intercept of 0, and you could simply choose not to write it. So in this problem, if that were to happen, we would have something like y equals -3/4 x plus 0, and that plus 0 would be optional. You could leave that off. So if that were ever to happen, where it went through 0, you could just leave off your intercept.